Teachers of Reddit, what are your most terrifying Gen Alpha can't read, behave, etc. horror stories? Teacher friend told me that for years she has been seeing ability to interact with technology decline. She says a lot of her students now basically have the same ability to solve problems on a computer that you'd expect from your grandparents. I suspect growing up in the very curated world of tablets and apps has allowed them to skip all the troubleshooting lessons millennials had to learn on old computers and the early internet. I graduated over 10 years ago with a class that was filled with seniors that had to slowly sound out every single letter. You're telling me it got worse? New tech is marketed as it just works until it doesn't. Then you throw it out and buy a brand new one, even if the old one could have been fixed with 5 minutes of randomly stumbling through settings until you found something that looked useful. Boring semi-tangential anecdote time. I once wanted to know how a differential worked, the mechanical DLI that allows powered wheels to turn at different speeds for corners. I went on YouTube and found many videos with cool high-tech graphic. I teach high school math. I've encountered many students who were operating at maybe a second grade level of math. Seniors who couldn't do 2 by 3 in their heads. Juniors who didn't know what a square root was. Juniors who didn't know how to multiply by 0 or 1. Seniors who couldn't solve for x and x18. Freshmen who couldn't add or subtract. I had one sophomore this year who could not wrap her mind around 20 more than in a certain type of problem. I tried for a few minutes before saying, "Yeah, I'll never forget the time in my English 101 class freshman year of college. We had to get into groups and proofread each other's essays. It was enlightening to see how graduates who got into a decent university didn't seem to be able to make a coherent argument, much less properly lay out an essay. That was like 15 years ago." My friend teaches 5th grade. He is just now getting the kids that were learning to read when COVID happened. He said several of them can't tell time on a digital clock. Not a teacher but an educator at a museum. I had a parent allow their child of 3-5, I had no idea their age, but they were walking and talking but still pretty small, to open random drawers and cabinets which included a cleaning supplies closet and attempt to play with industrial-grade cleaning materials. When I asked her not to do that, she told me I was discouraging his creativity and argued that since we are an interactive museum, everything is part of the exhibit at ISNT. Upon me asking I've taught 9/12 for the last 9 years. The scariest thing for me is they can't think. Problem solving, troubleshooting, reasoning. There are so many kids who have little processing power, and it seems to be getting rapidly worse in the last couple of years. I think it's TikTok. They don't even have time to think about the bite-sized piece of media they just consumed before the next one is up. I had a pre-K student whose speech was unintelligible. He could not communicate. So I told his mom he needed to be tested for speech therapy, and she replied, "Oh, so he want baby talk anymore? I'm gonna miss hearing that." First kid in this thread who can actually read something. High school student asked me what it means to put it in his own words instead of copying and pasting. One of my 4th graders was provisionally promoted from 3rd grade in the middle of the school year. He was reading at a 1st grade level when he arrived in my class. He hit his 14-day suspension cap quickly because he was constantly fighting with other kids instead of actually trying to learn. The guidance counselor pulled him out to do a therapeutic art project one afternoon. That's how we discovered that he doesn't know his shapes either. It was one of the worst cases of educational 10-11-year-old kids? Unless they have a serious learning disability. Not knowing how to read at that age is really neglect of the parents. I'm not a teacher but a former janitor, and all I can say is urine and feces everywhere. Currently studying to be a teacher. In one of my in-school placements, I had students come up to me and ask what time it was. I would always look at the clock on the wall, that they had clear view of, and tell them the time. None of the kids 12-14-year-olds knew how to read a clock. I even explained how to read it to a few of them, and they looked at me like I had 2 heads. Okay, the 20 more one, Jesus Christ. I mean just Jesus Christ. Only 27 of the incoming 6th graders at the local middle school are proficient in math skills. Also, next to zero problem-solving skills or critical thinking skills, like a "do it for me" or "I'm just not doing that woman shrugging" mindset for schoolwork. You can turn in zero work for a class and get passed through. We don't require motivation anymore. Edit to add for reference on how disturbing the math percentage is. 6th grade math skills would include basic work with fractions, finding averages. I was an elementary school sub for many years. Phonics is no longer taught in our district, and they don't do math drills in class. It's all supposed to be done at home by the parents, and that doesn't happen. So the kids don't have the muscle memories in place with the basics, which prevents them from being able to think through the rest of the problem. Plus, our district bought into this concept of spiral math, where the kids are introduced to high math concepts like negative numbers. Children as pets accessories, gross. This is definitely a huge problem that we're starting to see in the workforce. The first adults who were raised on tablets and things like Google Chromebooks are entering the workforce with essentially the technological understanding of boomers in the mid-2000s. They literally don't understand how to open programs like Microsoft Word. They don't know how to save files, and then God forbid they need to go find that file again. They have no idea what they're doing. It is extremely concerning. When I was in 5th grade, I was garbage with analog clocks. One day I came home and saw my mom literally bought one of those big classroom-style posters explaining it for me. And I figured it out in short order. But how can you not read a digital clock? It says the number exactly the same as on the phone? Is it the font of the interface that they don't understand? I had a teacher in elementary school that if you didn't know how to do something basic like 2-3, they would walk you down to the special ed classroom and leave you there for the day. The 90s were wild. Almost weekly occurrence in my high school teacher friend's classroom. Teacher, hey, where's your laptop? Student, it's in my bag. Teacher, why isn't it out? Student, it's dead. Teacher, where's your charger? Student, at home, I think? Teacher, perhaps one of the other 20 students in this room have a charger you can borrow? Student, maybe? Stares blankly for 5 seconds. Teacher, well, are you going to ask someone? Student, oh right, can I borrow a charger? My buddy says it's. My partner is a teacher, and has come home several times telling me about 10 and 11-year-old kids who can't use a ruler. A fucking ruler. They can't use it to measure a straight line. They can't use it to draw a straight line. They can't use it to draw a line to connect 2 points. They just don't know how to use it. At 10 years old. Edit, spelling, apparently no one taught me to proofread. I would like to think you were exaggerating a bit, but I was at a life-size replica of Stonehenge made out of old cars and trucks stacked on top of each other. Carhenge in Nebraska, and parents were letting their kids climb on the rusty old cars to play. Staff had to come out and tell them that climbing up a 15-foot car stood on end to sit on top of another car stacked on top of it wasn't allowed. The parents were mad that there wasn't a sign saying it wasn't allowed. A friend is a music teacher in high school. He said that he hasn't observed Gen Alpha brain rot in his students. He thinks it's specifically because music is an antidote for brain rot. It encourages patience and attentiveness. Of course, the parent was upset that her kid was not on honor roll and demanded to know why he was failing every subject. Honestly, I find this to be the most concerning part. How are the parents so removed and uninvolved from their child's education, but also so entitled and demanding of the school? Oh, friend. I too work in a museum, and I feel this so hard. My office is off a room display. You would never know it was there if you didn't work there. The number of times I hear parents read the "For the safety of our artifacts, please do not sit on the furniture" signs out loud, then tell their kids, "Quick, sit over there and I'll get a photo." Although I do enjoy yelling, "Please do not sit on the furniture," and hearing their screams at a disembodied voice after. This happened with my brother and sister-in-law. Their kid had to go to speech therapy because they refused to stop talking baby talk to him. He is 10. Now they homeschool. High school teacher in Norway. In my class of 18 students, I had 2 that knew how to read the analog clock. Worse though, at least 6 of them didn't understand quarter past, 5 past, half past, etc. More hilarious than terrifying. My good friend is a high school teacher, usually teaching seniors. One day she gave a research assignment about the legend of Sleepy Hollow. One of the papers she had gotten back really confused her because it started going off about mysteries and time travel. Then it hit her, this student had done the old look up the Wikipedia article and write about that but had accidentally pulled up the 2013 show. They're not good at problem solving or self-reflection. And they struggle to pay attention. You ask them a question, and they look at you like you're going to spoon-feed them the answers. There's no initiative. No drive. No curiosity. During a project week we had a first grader who could barely speak our national language, barely his mother tongue, but he spoke in memes like a pro. In the last year alone, I can think of 3 students off the top of my head who got caught touching themselves in class while making eye contact with another student. We had a kid running a full drug operation out of the boys' bathroom. Vapes, weed, cigarettes, a burner phone to do the transactions, the whole 9. When I try to tell them their written work is completely unintelligible due to incoherent grammar and lack of basic sentence structure, I am met with, I said what I said. If I'm a CPA at a Big 4 accounting firm and same. I wanted to be a teacher and student taught in an area where mommy and daddy felt like their little monsters were always right. I had one parent call up the board to get me dismissed all 7 members because her child didn't feel challenged enough in class. My students were freshmen, and as an introductory exercise to the house on Mango Street, I asked the kids to illustrate what their ideal home would look like. That was it. That was what was so offensive to the child that the parent called. I had a kid put down Google as their reference for an extremely shitty 3-page essay. Another kid wrote J. Christ. The beginning of time. The Bible as a reference for a paper on evolution for a college class. These kids have never had to install Windows XP Service Pack 3 to play a game, and it fucking shows. Yeah, had a kid this week doing a book report that included comparing the book to its film adaptation. They basically said that they were aware of having to think hard to get the story from the book, and said they like films 'cause they do the thinking for me. Long thumb yam run workable sophisticated cause memorize birds full. This. And no sense of curiosity either. The only questions kids I know ask are, can I have that? Can I play with that? Not, how does this thing work? Or, why did that you do that? As in, what's the purpose of that action? In kids' speak. And also no creativity whatsoever. Luckily, my nieces are the exception to all of this. They are very smart, curious, and creative. They're the only kids I know like that at all, though. The director of music and fine arts at my district MCs all the concerts. He always says, it's not certain whether music makes the children perform better, or whether music simply attracts the better performing students. I don't care. This is actually kind of scary. I imagine this scenario happening to me and can't fathom how someone would think it was okay to do this. Phrase. Ironic. One reason this blows my mind is that I've used so much math in my life. Not only in jobs that required a degree, but also near-min-wage jobs, household DIY, and a bunch of hobbies. So do these kids ever figure it out, or will they forever struggle to convert a recipe, hang several pictures equidistant from one another, figure out the more valuable move on a board game turn, design basic woodworking and sewing projects, and count up a till? Do they get separate checks everywhere they go? Darmok and Jalad scenario. One of my exes had an 11-year-old daughter that couldn't read. I was flabbergasted when she went to the bathroom, then asked which was the hand sanitizer and which was the hand soap. They were both in their original labeled bottles. Elementary PE teacher here. The amount of children biting when angry is terrifying. I have several that will chase a kid down after they've been wrong, grab their arm, and bite them like a dog. So far they're all under 7, but I'm up to 4 in different classes. That's a specific problem. I'll add that in general we are doomed. I teach college. The number of students that can't compose a basic research paper is depressing. I had one student research a company, but the company's name changed a few years prior. Clearly she was plagiarizing from an earlier student's paper. I told her over and over, Company A is now called Company B. By calling it Company A, it is clear that you have not even visited the company's current website, a requirement for the paper. She ignored me and stuck with calling it Company A and failed. This generation is going to have a lot of problems. And it's not because of the teachers, or the curriculum, or the lack of discipline, or the inability to hit kids, or whatever else people want to blame. It's 100% pure and simple that politicians are gutting the school systems on all levels. If kids can't read in your school system, it is 100% because a rich asshole decided to strip essential resources away from your school system. I imagine ChatGPT and the like are only making this worse. Why think when you can ask a chatbot to do it for you? Not a teacher, but several people in my family are primary school teachers and teachers' assistants. Most recent story I was told, for Children's Day, my cousin made bracelets to give to her 3rd grade class with the phrase Happy Children's Day. A few of the kids couldn't read it. She can't force the kids to learn BC. The parents complain that she is abusing the kids by trying to teach them. Not a teacher, but I was a classroom assistant to a bunch of 12-13 years olds. Most of them could read, some of them had reading struggles, but spelling and grammar was generally atrocious. I knew a couple kids that really struggled with open-ended questions and drawing conclusions from contextual clues. But behavior? Jesus, where to begin? I knew the principal of the school I worked at did not really believe in disciplining children, that everything can be resolved over a cup of tea and a chat. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a musician, but I think it's important to have music and arts programs in school, for many reasons. I'm disappointed that those kinds of programs often get cut. It's actually been happening way longer. No Child Left Behind was passed in 2001, and it basically tied school funding to academic performance. If your school has students who fall behind or aren't passing classes, then you don't get as much money. It became in the best interest of the schools to pass kids who shouldn't be passed in order to secure more funding. It became essentially impossible to fail kids or hold them back, because administration wouldn't allow it, which is how you end up why. I was at a museum, and watched a kid knock over and break such a large piece of art that it sounded like a bomb went off. The exhibit was called Big or something. It was a gigantic wooden top balanced on its side. When a museum worker came up to the mother and son, the mom was just like, well, he could touch art in that other exhibit, so he thought he could touch this one, and just kept hanging out in the museum. I would have died from embarrassment, but she just let him keep doing whatever aft. We had a kid who didn't know that deserts were dry. Also, hardly any of them know the difference between vowels and consonants. Thanks, Lucy Calkins. My nephew was a COVID baby, so the 2024-2025 school year was his first. His kindergarten class was stuffed with kids like him, only children of young parents who had never had to share attention in their 5 short years of life. It was all very fun for him. Until day 3, when sharing became an untenable concept. A physical fight ensued, but they had no idea how to go about it. The whole class kinda gathered in a circle and took turns stomping on each other's toes while they sobbed hysterai. Apparently they don't teach phonics anymore. They teach sight reading, so kids only know how to read words they've seen before. They don't know how to sound things out. Disclaimer, not a teacher or parent, so I can't confirm this, but it's what I've heard. I work for a school transportation department, and when I'm not in the office, I'm a permanent substitute who fills in for absent bus drivers. Each bus is parked in the same lane at the schools every single day, regardless of who is driving. Most students walk up to the bus, and if they see it isn't their regular driver, they look around in horror and start wandering around aimlessly. I tell them every time it will be in the same lane regardless of driver, but I can drive the same route. This is the one that gets me the most. Sure, kids will fall behind in reading, math, etc. COVID fucked them hard on that, but the lack of ability on computers just feels out of place. I'm 33, so I got the golden age of it all, but still, it's not like computers have changed. The UI is more or less the exact same as when we were growing up, and from the stories I am hearing, it's shit like, they don't know how to begin writing an email. What? These are extremely basic steps of, click this. I tutored adults at a community college. One of their assignments in Bio 101 was to measure things. I thought it was so dumb until multiple adults came in not knowing how to read or use a ruler. Lack of critical thinking and reasoning skills is the big one for me. And a lack of curiosity in the world around them. Parroting memes is the worst, I think, though. It seems to really kill any imagination that kids used to have. That's a weird spread. I learned my times tables in 3rd grade, fractions in 4th or 5th, and didn't learn how to do averages until freshman year of high school. Though the average grade I learned all those was in fact 5th, I guess. I left teaching in 2023. I taught an earth science class. Mostly sophomores, 15-year-olds. One of the questions on a test about plate tectonics said, what do Chile, California, Alaska, and Japan have in common? And I was looking for anything related to the Ring of Fire. Even just saying something like they're on a fault line, or even they get earthquakes would be been good enough. Someone answered, they all in America. Motherfucker, you watch anime, how do you write that answer down? There are no consequences, none. At the high school where my husband worked, he saw one kid shove a much smaller kid and told him to step aside. The administration felt this was too coercive and told my husband, next time you should try leading from a place of curiosity. I have pupils in their teens who, despite being perfectly bright, can't do maths beyond a primary school level and have absolutely no motivation to practice. They're just biding their time until they can start using calculators. They can't even gauge whether the answers derived that way are likely to be correct or not, though, the fundamental understanding isn't there. What's so deeply frustrating is the dichotomy in modern pedagogy. On one hand, we acknowledge that pupils are fundamentally. When I was in 5th grade, it was discovered that a turd was left by the urinals in the boys' bathroom. At that age, poop was the height hilarity. We all wanted to go see it, partly out of disbelief, and partly curiosity. About 4 of us decided that we'd go to the bathroom together to check it out. Sure enough, there was a log left out on the floor. The whole bathroom smelled like a porta potty. There was a rather rambunctious kid who was with us, Kevin. He was tall and goofy, well liked, but I was a TA for a US History 101 college class. I had a student write that Benjamin Franklin was a US president. I went to Wikipedia. Apparently Pennsylvania also had presidents for a time, and the kid just didn't read that far. Yes. I had to show a college freshman how to save files onto his computer, where to find them, and then how to move them. I also always get a couple who can't fucking handle uploading to Canvas, despite me going through it in class, showing them in person, and then literally having done it before. They forget or something. Oh my God! This one made me gasp out loud. Not in my class, but just yesterday we were at a coffee shop and 2 of the girls didn't recognize a quarter. One asked the other, "Is this a nickel? Wait, is a nickel only 5 cents? Then tried to flag us down for stiffing them, and I said, "A quarter is 25 cents. How did they get the job as cashiers? We're doomed." Gen Z, not a teacher. Sometimes I'm absolutely baffled by the lack of reading comprehension, work ethic, and critical thinking skill among my own peers. How in God's green earth is it getting worse? This happens way too much. I'm an art teacher. My 16-year-old kids use AI to do the work. No thinking, no creativity. And I thought I was bad at math. Jesus Christ. My kid can touch what they want. Everything is part of the exhibition. Yes, and if they don't put down that bleach, they'll become part of its history too. That method of teaching math seems like it would be great for the few kids who are really good at math and horrible for everyone else. God forbid they tested who was good at math and had different classes. Someone's feelings might get hurt. Not a teacher, but I was a counselor at a summer camp. On the second day, the boys told me to convince one kid aged 12 to shower because he refused to. After I resorted to dragging him into the bathroom, he looked at the shower head and asked, "What do I do?" So I had to tell him how to take a shower. Eventually he did while I stood outside and waited. He's 12 years old, and his parents still bathe him. When I was in school, you got punished for forgetting to charge for getting your Chromebook overall. But there was a contingency offered. You simply went down to the tech office and got a spare at no charge, with the expectation that you'd return it. I teach high school seniors and am trying to bring back pen and paper schooling. Kids don't know how to use staplers. This is not an isolated incident. One broke my stapler trying to refill because he didn't realize you could break shorten the replacement staples. Many don't know what side to staple or how to line up pages. I had a student today claim a stapler was broken because they didn't push it down hard enough until it, stapled. With so many things done online, they can't. My mother is also a teacher preschool. A sizable portion of her students won't even succeed in kindergarten, much less beyond that. My generation, millennials, is the worst generation of parents by a fucking mile through sheer negligence alone. Boomers may have beat their kids with switches, but at least they were doing it to try and teach them a lesson. Millennial parents don't try to teach their kids through any method at all. Not a teacher, I do give classes from time to time, but I work with university students. The scariest thing I am seeing is they have no drive to even troubleshoot simple problems. The mindset is simply someone else will solve it. And I have only been doing this for 2 years. Almost a decade in education now. These kids have zero attention span. Absolutely none. They are so poisoned by YouTube and TikTok. They need constant stimulus. Non-stop engagement, no lull, no downtime, just distraction after distraction after distraction, bursts of noise and color and stimulus in 10-second increments, shaped by far too much unmitigated access to social media. It's both sad and frightening. I graduated almost 20 years ago with people who couldn't write a research paper without starting it. I am writing a research paper about subject from college. Are you telling me it got worse, and then worse again? Are we letting these kids drive? Not me, but my mom is a preschool teacher. Her class currently has one particular student whose behavior is so bad that the other children are terrified of him, and he's managed to injure the staff a couple times. A 4 or 5-year-old has injured grown adults on multiple occasions. Granted, some of her students are special needs, so I don't know if this kid just has behavioral issues or if it's a Gen Alpha thing. She has stated that he needs to be in a different class that's better EQ. I've got those kitty how to tell the time working clocks all over my house for my kid. The ones with labels all over it for the hands and quarter past, etc. They're damn well going to know how to read the clock. I teach college math, and I had student in Calculus 3 need a calculator to do 1.7 by 10 because they struggled on doing math with decimals. I think so, but some people are hearing about educational horror stories for the first time. There have always been places where half the class couldn't read. But from what every teacher tells me, it has gotten worse. This is different. This was literally taught to me in math class in elementary, and HS to give a reminder. It blows my mind that people can't be bothered to learn to read a clock. I think it's a culmination of things. Society is stifling children from the beginning. They're not allowed to play out of eyesight of their parents. They're not allowed to wander and roam in groups. A lot of problem-solving and decision-making development is made during free play. Then there's the issue of having a tablet shoved in their faces, which impacts attention span and gross fine motor functioning. Parents are not reading to their children like they need to. Parents have tea. I literally just boggled at this. How in the hell do you not know how to use a ruler to draw a straight line? I always think these stories are exaggerated, but I teach private piano lessons and had a 9-10 years old girl a few months back who admitted that she couldn't read her very basic beginner-level music theory book, nor could she write very well. First time I've seen it in person after decades of teaching. Not a teacher, but when I was at trade school for my electrical certification, the amount of high schoolers who came straight into trade school and couldn't do basic math or read the provided workbooks and retain the most basic info was insane. By the end of the first semester, 50 of them couldn't tell you what voltage even was, and 80 couldn't calculate voltage and current or resistance. It's literally a formula VIR that you just plug the numbers into and get the answer the second sem. My girlfriend had a friend she grew up with, and her husband homeschooled the kids, and by that they literally did no schooling at all. The boy is 13 and literally cannot read. They say he'll just join the military, but even to do that you have to be able to read at even a basic level. Don't the buses themselves have numbers too? I mean, that's how I found my bus. I don't think I ever assumed location, just walk down the line and find it. I'm not saying which city, but my ex in Ohio is friends with a pair of siblings, the brother of which recently became a police deputy. He is illiterate, and has misspelled his own name before. Well, at least at some point, he'll be promoted to a grade above his weight class and won't be able to fight with the other kids anymore. Silver lining. I work at a summer camp. Last week they were building mini off-brand Legos, and I was helping a child because the instructions were more complicated than regular Legos. He had to arrange 5 pieces to match the picture in the instructions. The child spent over 5 minutes trying to arrange the pieces and couldn't do it. Edit. The child was in 4th or 5th grade. My own parents taught me how to read before I even went into 1st grade. The generation of parents that raise these dumbass kids are the true failures.